You're running a business. So when you hire somebody, remember you're hiring the whole person. That means their success, their failures, their fears, their trepidations, and all. Are you prepared for this? Sit back, stay tuned. We're going for a ride.
In this episode, we're talking a lot about personalities, and you mentioned when you hire someone, they're bringing their whole self, all of it. And it's important to say as we get into this, because this is really a discussion. We can talk about sort of helping kind of navigate some of these things, but every situation is going to be different. And I think the toolkit that you're going to be using is going to be different for every scenario. So it'd be a very long episode if we tried to go that route. But the one thing I do want to remind everyone is, number one, we're not HR professionals, and we're also not mental health professionals. But we've run this business now going on 23 years and have seen quite a bit and have worked with a number of people, had built a large team and saw this in practice every single day. And I think it's an important thing to talk about because I think today, even it's not even just your teams. It's also whether they're full-time, they could also be contract employees that you bring on to do specific tasks. If you're hiring a crew for the one-off shoots, I think even working with your clients. And we had an entire episode that was talking about mental health, which I think is a good one to watch in tandem with this one, because I think it covers a lot of the same topics. But there is a lot to this, and you start to realize that there are certain things that you, in many ways, when you make the decision that you're going to start to hire, you may not always realize all that's coming with it and how your role within your own company is going to change overnight. And I think that's the big thing that you have to sort of prepare for. Am I hitting that on the head, Brian?
Yeah. If you go back to the mental health episode, everybody's got their own struggles, which also means that everybody's tracking that straight into your office. And it doesn't mean you should avoid that in your hires. It just means to realize that every single person is going to have an impact, and you are going to be exposed to a lot more than you ever bargained for if you haven't hired people in the past. How you do that is more about your character and more about your business. It says a whole lot more about you than anything that gets tracked in. And I say tracked in that way because you're not expecting it. It can be a fight with a significant other. It could be a financial exploration. It could be a sickness of a parent or loved one. Heck, even a death of a pet. It all will come through your transom. Are you prepared? How are you going to be prepared? How are you going to set up your environment? So I don't know if I answered that question, but I'm hoping I put a little nuance to it. And I see so many businesses out there that are sort of an all or nothing. And it can't be that way either. You can't discount it, and you can't necessarily open your doors wide and say, well, everyone's having a rough day today and we're all impacting each other negatively. Yay. There's a fine line here, and there's a fine balance. And I think if you're not prepared for that because you haven't hired before, then you really don't know what you're getting into. And this may be more of a shocker than anything else to people out there that, oh, how do I deal with it? What do I do? How can I navigate this when somebody's having a horrible situation happen to them and it's going to impact? So I don't know. I think I'm overstating it at this portion, but you can't be emotionless, but you also can't let emotion rule the day inside of the office. So how do you do this? Yeah. How do you walk the walk, and at the end of the day have everybody leave feeling better for having been in that same environment together? Thoughts, Johnny?
Yeah. It's funny when we're doing these shows, Brian will create outlines of an episode, and you'll read the episode, and then when you really start to get into talking about it, you realize how deep it can go. And I think about this right now, and the thing that keeps popping in mind is when you hire someone, it immediately hits you the immense responsibility that you have for this person if they have a family, for their family. So if they're a married individual with kids and suddenly you're the employer for this breadwinner of that household, whether it's main breadwinner or, it's a dual situation, whatever it is, you are now responsible to ensure that the systems are in place to provide this person with a livelihood, right? In return, they're bringing their skill, their talent, their love for what they do to help, elevate your company, your brand, and to really take care of your clients. That's the trade-off. But part of that responsibility, if you're building a really good culture, part of that responsibility is also taking care of the whole person. It's not just a financial aspect of, the health insurance and the 401k and their payroll. It's the other part of it too, making sure that you're helping to take care of that whole person. And if there's a struggle that is happening with them, that is going to come into work. And depending on the severity of it is going to determine how you have to react and be a support or find the resource for them to get the support that they need. And that's a big part when you think about what your day is normally like, and what it is that you want it to do in this business that you started. Now add 3, 4, 5 team members or 10 members or a team of 25. Hopefully by that point you've got a human resources person in. But if it's a small team and it's just you running it, or you and a business partner, it starts to change the very role of what you have. But it's critical that you're a part of it. And we've all been there. I mean, I remember my first job and my first job in corporate, where it was basically you show up at this time and you're working until this time. And, that was basically it. And things have opened up now where we are all talking much more freely about, which I think is a good thing, right? In terms of being able to really talk about our things like mental health or that sort of thing, things that we're struggling with. But it can put you in a situation pretty quickly if you're not handling it in the best way and understanding where your limits are in terms of what you can and can't do. And it's important to kind of keep that dialogue going.
That's actually a tremendous statement right there, because it's a trap. There are no two ways around it. It's a trap. You want to build your business. You want to bring people in. You have to know what comes along with that. But remember, you're a boss first. That said, if somebody has a need that can make their life better and not sacrifice elements of the business, why wouldn't you meet that? Why wouldn't you try to help? Why wouldn't you try to? Which brings us to the second part of the trap, the emotional component. Every last person we have ever hired, I genuinely like. I'm not going to say they're going to call me to go to a baseball game because we're bestest buddies, but if I meet them on the street, it's a half hour to hour long conversation. I like these people. So the emotional component sways you. Now, remember, you're a boss. The emotional component sways you. And here's the final kicker. You're not a professional mental health specialist. So with those three things constantly at odds, you got to understand the kind of place you want. Can we be a place that is taking care of people by looking at them as whole people and giving them what they need? Yes, we've made that determination. Can we do that all the time, every time, for everything? No, because we would be out of business, and through no fault of anybody else's, but you become very used to a comfort level when all parameters are given over to your needs, your whims, without the needs of understanding what your teammates need. So you have to balance those. And then you start to feel bad about balancing those. And then you feel bad for the person if you can't give them 500 weeks time off for whatever. Could you give them 3 weeks off? Yeah. Can you figure it out? Sure. So I'm talking about reasonable expectations and reasonable growth and reasonable accommodations that don't negate the fact that you're a business person first, that you're a human second, and that you're not a mental health professional third. So how do you do this? And that therein lies the trap. I would love everybody to get everything they need all the time, and you would too. I think we've done very well by the people we've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do better? Even if they say, no, you couldn't have, I always feel guilty that maybe I couldn't have. That's that emotion. Are they doing what they need to get the help they require? Because we can't be that. We are not professionals. It's not safe for us to do that. If they can, are we supporting that? If they can't, are we trying to point them toward the right resources that would help them without imposing our will upon them, but helping them as that human being? So it's a messy space. There is no good answer here. I do think for us, intent is always won out because I think people have seen like, hey, these guys are trying to help me out when they don't need to. I think that's the good litmus test. Is somebody trying to offer me flexibility or help when they don't need to be? Cool. That to me is the litmus test. And I think we've passed that with flying colors. But,
Yeah,
there's always guilt. There's always guilt.
there is, and there's a balancing act too, because you mentioned being a boss first. You have, the business has to be profitable and sustainable. Sustainability, like without that, like why are you even doing it? It has to take care of its clients to be sustainable. And it has to take care of its people to be sustainable. So it's the balance act of keeping all of those things in check. And specifically with your people, I think that there are certain levels of things that you do right on the onset. Make sure it's understood what the nature of the relationship is. If it ever gets to a point where it's feeling like you're best friends, that's actually not a great place to be. As Brian said, you are a boss first. It sounds cold, but it's actually not. It sets guardrails and sort of a really nice, not parameters, but it sets boundaries for, what should be happening within an office environment. With that, though, there are ways to create safe spaces for having conversations. And even though you're not besties, there should be a large amount of trust that's built up. And it takes time, but having that trust is important. The balance with that trust is making sure that at some point, it could get to that really difficult decision of whether the relationship is working for the business or not. And that's where it can be fairly difficult. But in the meantime, being able to create a safe space for someone. And if you go back and listen to the mental health episode, Brian mentioned the concept of having the pressure relief valves that are sprinkled throughout. If there's a heavy workload, or if you notice that someone is struggling with a specific task, or running a specific project or something, having the ability to give them that, one, an out, a clean out, or two, some way to relieve the pressure and the stress that they're under. The clean out is an important one. It has to be a place of where if they're in over their head on a project, let's say, and that's causing undue stress, or something that's going on in their life is preventing them from doing that task, they have to be able to have an out in a safe way where they're not feeling that they're going to lose their job, because people get into protection mode and will try to push through and just cause more damage to client relationships, to the project, all of those things, if they don't feel safe in coming up to you to tell you, hey, look, I think I need help here. So that's where that safe space really comes into play. If you have enough of those, though, then either the person needs to be trained up or put into a different role that they're better suited. So sometimes if there's a lot of external pressures on them for whatever reasons or whatever's happening, having a role that is critical to the business, but maybe is not as stress-inducing, even if it's temporary, could be a part of a solution in there as well. But safe spaces, building trust, having open conversations, and the trust is huge, because the one thing you never want to do is talk about what's happening with any one person, with anyone else within the organization. That's not your news to share.
Bingo.
That's theirs. And so
Yep.
they have to know that they can trust you inherently.
Mhm.
from beginning to end. So yeah, it's a challenge, but that's where you'll be once you begin to hire people into your organization.
So, and that's also the other litmus test. It's that idea of safe space, safe space, safe space, safe space. To date, we have had that, and it's been a really good feeling because no. Oh, and that's the other thing. They need to know that if it is a safe space, great, they can talk about it. There is absolutely no fear of retribution. And as Johnny mentioned, this knowledge that what you say to them stays with them. Sometimes they just need to come in and talk about a way to work around a situation, and they're just test boarding, testing it out, seeing if they can handle it, but what your opinions are. And dangerous place from a business standpoint, but really good from a management standpoint because they have the tools. And if they're coming to you, they already know they have the tools. So when you're hiring somebody, you really are inheriting them. You're inheriting them to be part of your team. If you can't continue running the business because the insurmountable amount of issues are getting in the way, then you're not doing good for those around you and you're letting down teams appropriately. As Johnny said, if you've got to be in business to stay in business, and that helps all the people who work with you. So it is a mess. It is a knot. It is all twisted and tied up. But if you start from the place that you are inheriting a whole person, they bring with them issues, they bring with them successes, they bring with them everything under the sun. And your job is to be there to catch them when you can, to brush them off when you can, to stand them back up when you can, to take them off of projects when you need to, and to put them on other projects when you need to. And there's that understanding, you're already off to the races. If you don't realize that you cannot separate out a person from their life experiences, then you shouldn't be in a position to hire people. And I've said this a couple of times throughout this series. I'm not saying it to be cruel. I'm saying it so you don't F up your business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're great as a one person shop, be a one person shop if you're not ready to do this. If you're great as a 2-person shop, same thing, 3-person shop, whatever. Don't expand the team if you can't be there for the full team. And guess what? Welcome to the world of now managing people, not just projects. So understand what you're getting into, and it's all okay. But you got to be a people person. You got to understand what they bring to the table, what they take from the table, and you've got to be willing to engage in that. If
Mm.
you're not, don't hire people because you'd be very disappointed. You're not hiring a skill set. You're hiring a whole person.
Yeah, it's a human being, and there's another side to it too, and that's the other. We get into the business for a specific reason, and then it starts to shift once you get a team, and that could be one person under you. It could be you have a team of three, 3 employees. It doesn't take many to suddenly change the very nature of what it is that you do every day and the things that you no longer have time to do for the business because you are wrapped up in what's happening on the employee side. And we don't always realize that when we say like, oh, this is exciting. We're in a place where we need to bring on a team and grow. And it's this real place of excitement until you really realize what it entails. And it's huge. Um, the other part of this is too that once you have these employees in place, the other part of it is consistently nurturing them in their growth as well. So it's not just hiring someone to do a specific thing. Once you have someone in, the goal really is to try to keep them with you and help them grow with you so that it literally the company grows and just becomes better because all of you are getting new skills and training up and just kind of growing as people. And that's the best case scenario when you can do that. On the flip side is understanding that if you have 3 employees and there's one that is consistently draining the resources of the others on the team, of the company, or can't carry their weight in whatever task it is that you're putting them in, and there really isn't another place for them, you do have to then navigate the very tricky spot of, as I've heard people say, releasing them back to the marketplace, which is I don't know if that's a cold statement or not, but it's meant to be softer than firing someone. But there is a point at which you don't have the tools to help someone, and you have to figure out other resources for them. And in some cases, honestly, they might be struggling because of the environment you have. They're better suited for other environments. And so there are other companies that might actually be a much better fit where they'll actually thrive. Sometimes when it comes time for that very difficult decision of having to let someone go, we get emotional ourselves as the leaders of the team because we feel like we've failed, and we try to keep salvaging a situation. We feel that we're doing something negative for the person, and we don't want that. And so we do everything in our power to avoid it. But meanwhile, it's having a massive impact on the rest of the team. And if you're able to find that courage to have that moment to sit with that person and say, here's what, and there's an entire episode just on this part of it. So please don't take this as this is how it's done, because there is an entire process by which you should do this. But when that moment comes, when you let someone go from an organization, the morale from the rest of the team, it's amazing what happens in that moment. So it's important to get that skill where you're understanding where something is, you're able to work on something and able to make something better. And when it's kind of a bit of it's not going to be helped by what you have at hand or what your company is offering for this particular person. And it's best to do it as soon as you can to help mitigate any damage that could happen long term with the person. And for them too, I think you're helping them by helping them get to somewhere else where they can thrive more than being with you.
We've had the unfortunate situation of having to let people go. And I think I'm thinking about two specific occasions. And I think in both cases, it was almost a relief for them as well.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't done with hostility. It wasn't done with cruelty. It was done with the way we're working together can't continue. And we've tried everything. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, there was acknowledgement, there was an understanding. And that's a really neat place to be, because again, you pass them in the street, you're having a half an hour to an hour conversation with them because you're not leaving as combatants. And that's it's an amazing, all the fears disappear. All the fears disappear when that first happens the first time. You're like, wow, yeah. Okay. But I just want to point out one more thing. As a leader, you are culpable, though. You have to do everything in your power to see how you can make the fit work, see what you can do to accommodate. Again, not one that's going to destroy everything in the process, but can you be flexible? And there's one more important component. Not knowing what you're inheriting means you also don't know what traumatic responses exist out there in the world. So sometimes an employee will shut down on a project, and they shut down on a project that they're so capable of doing. But what you don't realize is that a family member went through A, or something happened to them that reminds them of B, or a client made some comment to them that you're not even aware of. Mm-hmm. You have to be aware. So as you inherit these people into your life, it almost behooves you to get to know them a little bit better so that you can keep them safe. So when we talk about safe spaces, it's even on the projects and the clients, and maybe they can build to it and maybe they'll want to, but to give them the ability to opt out of something, to give them the ability to say, I'd like to try this. Here are my fears. Mm-hmm. Is a wonderfully empowering thing you can do to your employees, and it will return on that investment multiple fold. But you gotta realize first the whole human being. And that's it. Mic drop. I don't know. I see that. I see that in practice. I've seen they're responding to this. I wonder if, and when you approach them, it's I didn't want it to affect my work. I don't want it looking like a sign of weakness. I just, I can't be around this. We've spent time in some very, very critical care environments with people of all different age brackets and all different medical conditions. And that can be hard.
Mhm.
Never underestimate how hard our jobs can be when people are putting their real lives on the line in front of our cameras.
Yeah.
So imagine what it's like to your team who has to relive that in looking for the perfect edit, 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 looking for the perfect edit. It's like a ball peen hammer of pain to some
Hmm.
folks. And you just got to have to understand that. Again, it can't be an excuse all the time.
Hmm.
But if you're cognizant that there's a preconditioned response, 9 times out of 10, you can figure out how to help this person out. And I think it
Hmm.
behooves us all to try.
Yeah. And it's interesting during this episode, if you noticed, I had difficulty talking about the firing part, letting
Mm-hmm.
people go. I was trying to come up with all sorts of phrasing for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy thing. It's a place to, there's some real kind of courage behind it, but and you have to do it. You have to get into it and do it. But it's not easy, because again, you're thinking about this person. So, the premise of this episode is this idea of what it means to hire. And if you're thinking of hiring folks for your team, for your company, to just be prepared that there is a lot that comes with it, not just the help on a project or for editing or for this. There is an entire side of it. Doesn't mean to not hire, but it just means think about it from a different perspective and understand what it is that you're getting into, for your company and how your role is going to change. So, it's great having a team. I loved the energy, when we go into the studio and just what was happening on a day to day and people. So photography session going on downstairs that had, I'm like, I don't want to know. And it just, there were all sorts of like crazy things happening in terms of people just being creative and having fun. And, I just remember that energy that existed in that. It's a fun time. But what you go home with versus what everyone else goes home with is very different. And you end up thinking a lot about this mini family that you've created when you've hired them on. And they will take a lot of that time of thinking about them, and all for good reason. It means that you're a good person and that you care about the people that you're spending your time with and who are putting in their skills to help your company grow. Um, so you just have to keep all of that in mind as you're looking to hire. So, um, without going into an entire HR portion of this episode, I think that might be a good place to kind of wrap it. I mean, we see a lot of bad examples out there of how folks are treated, and we always endeavor to be the difference out there in treating our people well. And I just remember giving, it'd snow here in the Northeast, and we'd be like, "Hey, everyone, it's a snow day." Heck, we'd tell people to go hit the powder and not come into the office at all. And it's just those little moments that give people so much relief. And it's amazing how it gets paid back. But it is a constant battle for sure. So
Yeah.
think about that as you're hiring. Comes with a lot more. So, but anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap this one, Brian. Let us know if there are any topics that we haven't hit yet that you'd love to hear about. We've seen just about everything in the 23 years in this business, and really 30 in the industry, 30 plus now in this industry. So hit us up. We'd love to talk about this stuff all day. So thanks for being here, and we will see you on the next one.